And good morning. We had a little bit of technical difficulties trying to get this thing going a little while ago, but we're back. We're live. This is the Defion Productions podcast. We'll try this again. I'm Don, hardest working nobody in Bitcoin. February 6th, 2025. We're going to talk about Bitcoin and crypto markets. Most notably, we're going to talk about the week in the Trump administration. David Sachs, the crypto czar, making an announcement, a press conference, kind of being a big nothing burger. A lot of price action, a lot of price volatility. We'll start there. Bitcoin sitting at $97,068.20, 1.923 trillion market cap. Ethereum sitting at 2,706, 326 billion market cap. XRP at 2.3. And Solana at 190, and the total market cap of crypto currently sitting at 3.17 trillion. And the fear and greed index is down pretty low at 35. We're at fear. Bitcoin dominance remaining at 61. It did peak earlier this week at about 64, which is pretty high. I believe it's the highest it's been this entire cycle. Hovering around 61 right now. It's kind of pretty high for this late in the cycle. Having it in the 60s like this, there's a lot of reasons that could be happening. A lot of these meme coins are kind of sucking liquidity out of the majors. A lot of things going on that I don't think are great for the crypto space. If you're a crypto guy, not a Bitcoin guy, that's causing the dominance to be so high. Ethereum significantly underperforming. You got Bitcoin still hovering just under 100,000, and Ethereum is pretty much at 2.7K and significantly under 3,000 at this point. The ETH to BTC chart looks awful for ETH. ETH's traveling in the completely opposite direction of Bitcoin in terms of store value and buying power. So, we got to keep an eye on that. Troy being the ETH maxi we've had some conversations about what we think is going on, why we think that's happening. I'm a Bitcoin maxi, and I believe everything's going to zero in terms of Bitcoin, so it's not surprising to me. What is a little bit surprising is that it this late in a cycle where I still think we're going to see pumps in these shit coins that ETH is still significantly underperforming, even still being the second largest crypto coin. All right, let's go on to our news of the week. We'll start out with talking about Trump's new crypto czar. One of the All In podcast mates, David Sachs, taking over the position, having his first press conference this week. I'm going to read a tweet by Mark Moss here. Trump's new crypto czar, David Sachs, had his first press conference yesterday. Did you catch it? If you listen carefully and know how to read between the lines, you can understand what's coming next. He said, stablecoins have the potential to ensure USD dominance and reinforce the U.S. as reserve currency, but even more, trillions in demand. You see, the U.S. has a problem, and that is our deficit spending is $2 trillion. So who's going to keep loaning us money? Who's going to keep buying the U.S. treasuries? Another problem globally is all other currencies. They're all worse. So we have a problem. All people over the world who desperately want dollars and have a hard time getting them, and at the same time have the U.S. government who desperately needs to buy the debt. So the U.S. gets USD stablecoins out and around the world, trillions in demand. And then the stablecoin companies then buy the U.S. debt and treasuries. And that is pretty close to a CBDC. Not the central banks directly to the public, but the U.S. Treasury to stablecoin company to the public almost. As you can see, the recent and rapid rise of stablecoins since Trump took office of over $200 billion. So what happens? Well, there was one other thing he didn't say that was important. Bitcoin reserve will be one of the first things we look at. So what does that mean and how does it fit in? Number one, U.S. greenlights USD stablecoin companies to go for it. 2, the U.S. or the world gobbles them up and fast. 3, U.S. inflates the stablecoin supply. Inflation. 4, Bitcoin soaks it all up, limits inflation in assets. 5, U.S. yield drops. And 6, USD global dominance continues. So what does that mean for us? Well, Bitcoin and companies building on and around the Bitcoin ecosystem are going to benefit big time. It's why, and this is Mark speaking in terms of his fund. It's why my venture fund, Bitcoin Opportunity Fund, just opened fund number 2. It's why I launched a new publicly traded Bitcoin company called Matador. It's why I write Quantum Wave Investment Report, recommending assets in the Bitcoin, AI, and tech space. This next decade is going to be bigger than almost all can imagine. Keep stacking. I wanted to show this tweet because this is a tweet from somebody who felt that the news conference was a big positive, and he felt that it said a lot and gave him I don't know, good vibes, good feelings, I guess. I would take the opposite of that, and I wanted to read that so the viewers can know that the sentiment overwhelmingly in Bitcoin and crypto on X is really high in regards to that press conference, in regards to the future, and in regards to what Trump is probably going to do with what they're calling a Bitcoin strategic reserve. I kind of mapped out last week a tweet from Justin Beckler talking about why the SBR is probably not going to happen, why it's not a good thing to happen. And I think that the press conference that we got this week kind of reinforces that because in my estimation, David Sachs said a lot of nothing. He kept it on stable coins, which, we can have if Troy was here, I'd love to have a conversation about, some of these other altcoins having utility of transferring value and people using them. The more I think about it, and the more I have conversations with people in both Bitcoin and crypto, a lot of these coins that are trying to have utility are trying to be peer-to-peer projects. They're trying to transfer value from one person to another. And I know even in the Bitcoin white paper that originally was stated that it was going to be a peer-to-peer currency. But if you're a business and you're accepting cryptocurrency for goods and services that you're selling, would you really want to be accepting a currency that is so volatile and the price moves from second to second? I mean, just taking Bitcoin obviously as the store of value. Like Bitcoin could be worth 100,000 this morning, and then by the afternoon it might be worth 93. I mean, do you really want to hurt your margins buying and selling by using a crypto asset that is going to have that much volatility? And then you have other coins like XRP, which is trying to be, from what I understand, an asset that banks use behind the scenes to transfer value the same way the SWIFT system does so now. And again, same problem. If you're going to use a coin that, just over this past weekend went from like $3.50 all the way down to $2.10. I mean, it lost like 40% of its value. So can you imagine these big banks and big institutions transferring value from one institution to the other and then having a 40% drop like that happen over the weekend when they're not even open and losing all that value? I just don't see that as something that banks would want to do. That's why I don't see the value in XRP. That's why when Sachs came out and had his press conference and kept it on stablecoins, it makes a whole lot of sense for the U.S. when they're talking about crypto, and the crypto czar is going to kind of keep the focus a lot on stablecoins and utilizing stablecoins. So everybody getting excited about the strategic Bitcoin reserve, thinking that the United States is going to be making this big announcement that we're going to be stacking and holding Bitcoin, and that's all we're going to do, and that's the whole job of the crypto czar. It's not a Bitcoin czar, it's a crypto czar, I think is sadly mistaken, and I don't think that's what we can expect. Nor do I think it's going to be a good thing if they try to do that. Well, we can talk more about that as we get more information and more news and things progress. But as of this week in that press conference, there was a lot of hype, and I don't believe that a lot was really given to us to show us any sort of direction. It was a lot of nothing in my opinion. Rich, did you get a chance to see the news conference at all?
I did not. It's been a crazy week over here, so I have really kind of been locked, not on purpose, just haven't had time to follow too many things. Beginning of the week, I was paying attention more to the stuff going on in Canada, Mexico, but then I didn't get to see too much, about any of the stuff with crypto this week. I was kind of interested this week, like I said, before we got going, before the computer crapped out on us, just kind of how you thought with the drop with crypto. So I'm kind of really interested to see like your take on all of this, and just so in general, it seems like people are kind of excited about this czar. But I think like anything, we just got to wait and see. Like I don't trust verify. Like, just,
yeah,
right. Like
that's
we don't
what it is.
Until we see things happen. I don't believe anything. Like, I don't care who your politician is and who's the chairman of what department, until they actually follow through on things and things actually happen. I'm kind of like, I'll believe it when I see it,
Yeah.
Especially for you guys in the crypto world, because you've been waiting for so damn long for this shit to kind of, sorry, I should have switched to my camera. We've been waiting so long for this type of thing, but is it going to be something real, or is it going to be kind of like, you just kind of said it? You know what I mean? Like, is a guy really going to have the clout to do the things that you guys think he should be doing?
Anything he does or anything they do is going to have to go through Congress anyways. So it's not going to be an executive order that's going to have any clout. It's going to have to be, anything financial is going to have to be passed by Congress. So they can say what they want to do. They can say what they're going to do after they do their findings and their studies or whatever. It's still going to have to get passed through Congress. So even the SBR that everybody gets excited about, a lot of Bitcoin maxis get excited about the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, they would still have to pass that through Congress. And I read this morning on Twitter that Wyoming shot down in their state assembly their Bitcoin Strategic Reserve for Wyoming, and I believe that's
a pretty conservative state.
And I believe that's where Senator Lummis, who proposed the SBR bill, she's either from Wyoming or Montana. I think it's Wyoming. I'm pretty sure it's Wyoming. Senator Lummis is from that state, and she proposed the SBR bill, and she's the one that spoke at the Bitcoin conference. That's her home state, and that state knocked down the SBR. So I think that we have to temper our expectations. It's inevitable. Like I tell Troy all the time, and I tell anybody that watches this podcast, like, I am not one of the Bitcoin maxis that thinks that the United States dollar is going to be replaced in the next couple of years. Bitcoin's going to tens of millions of dollars in the next couple of years, and we're just going to forget the US dollar. I don't think that happens. I don't even have it over 50% that it happens in my lifetime. I have it 100% that it happens at some point. I just don't think it's going to happen as quickly as everybody expects it to happen. They're going to fight until the very end, and they're very good at it, fighting to keep the U.S. dollar as the dollar dominant in the world. And that's not going to change, and it's not going to change just because of Bitcoin. And in the grand scheme of things, it's still such a small asset class. I mean, the entire crypto system at the start of this podcast was 3.7 trillion. Bitcoin is 1.9 trillion of that. The stock market is like 600 or 700 trillion. Like, it's just astronomical numbers.
It's not right. I think, like, again, if I've learned anything, the power of Bitcoin specifically versus some of these other coins is that it's limited. Like, there's a limited
scarcity.
Supply.
Yeah.
So
scarcity.
Given the fact that there's a limited supply, it can't fund everything. Like, it just can't be the source of everything because there's not enough of it. Like, you're still going to have gold. You're still going to have art. You're still going to have like, just faith in systems. Like, you're still going to have, because the American dollar is not based on anything except the
full
strength,
faith and credit of the United States government.
Right. Yeah. So, and that's why it goes up and down. And for some other reason, it's up right now. And for some other reason, and I've tried to understand the weakness of, say, the Canadian dollar at the moment, and try to understand, and it's deeper than I think I have a good enough understanding. But we all understand that the British pound is still very valuable. Like, it still holds a lot of, and we don't look at the British Empire. It's not even an empire anymore. We don't look at it like, wow, look at Britain, right? The UK is not this big.
They're not even in the Eurozone anymore. They Brexited out of the Eurozone, so
right?
They're just their own separate
entity.
entity.
But the pound is still really strong. Mm-hmm. Like, everybody said, the pound was going to sink to nothing. When they with Brexit, and that didn't happen. Like, they seem to be doing all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can talk a little bit about what you brought up, too, in regards to tariffs with Mexico and China. That had an enormous effect this past weekend on price. Bitcoin was right around, I think, 105-ish, maybe 106. And then when Trump made his announcement that he was going to impose those tariffs over the weekend, the price just dropped like a rock. Relatively speaking, I should say, for Bitcoin, because Bitcoin dropped from about 105 to 93 is where it bottomed, where I saw the bottom at. So that's like a $12,000 drop, right? So at 105, 106, that's like 9-10% drop. But the thing that's really fascinating is when you look at altcoins. Like, if Troy was on this podcast, he could tell you how bad his portfolio. We talked about this. Troy's portfolio took an enormous hit because some altcoins were down like 40-45% on a 2-day, like 36-hour span.
Right.
Because, the Bitcoin dominance, which I talked about at the beginning, is so high. The trust, the faith, the strength, the store of value is in Bitcoin. people are still saying that Bitcoin is volatile, and Bitcoin is so far less volatile than all these other shitcoins. Like it just when we have these major events, Bitcoin falls, but these other coins bleed much worse than Bitcoin.
Yeah, if
bleeds.
I had a lot of Bitcoin in my portfolio, I'd be less worried about the Bitcoin than I'm about my stocks. My 403b. I'm more worried about my 403b than I'm worried about if I had Bitcoin.
Yeah, and even if you have, you're very right. It's a good point. But for people that have like very centric, focused crypto Bitcoin portfolios,
Right.
the less Bitcoin they had, the bigger hits that their portfolios had. So me and Troy were talking like about like how our portfolios were taking hits, and it was like, I mean, I've been in this game so long. I've been in it where I've taken 50-60% hits over like a very short period of time, so I'm immune to it in when it comes to my Bitcoin portfolio. But like even still, like I'm like, dude, I'm only down like 10% in my portfolio, and at one point he was down like 35%, I believe, something like that, something in that range, because he plays with a lot of those crypto coins. And the other thing too that you have to take into consideration is a lot of these crypto coins are used for trading, and people are trading on leverage. And when people trade on leverage, they get liquidated. When they get liquidated, it cascades, and you have these big sell walls. And then, you know, I say this all the time, and me and Troy had this conversation this weekend. Like, you can be a great trader for like weeks and weeks and months and make tons and tons of money. It only takes one time to wipe you out. That's really all. Like this weekend wiped out so many people that thought that they were like really good at trading, and now they're starting back at zero.
Which is funny because like I remember like early 2000s when everybody was gonna there was a lot of guys that were gonna like, I'm just gonna be a day trader and I'm just gonna run my portfolio and that's gonna how I'm gonna live. And every single one of those guys that were doing that in like 2000, every single one of them all have real jobs now, like, or other jobs. Like that just wasn't the thing. They did well for a period of time, but I mean, I think it's kind of like, and you could speak this better than me, trying to be a professional gambler. Like you're going to have luck and you're going to have some things, but you just don't, like if you're in trading, unless you have, there's just too much that goes on that you just don't know what's going to happen. You can predict, but if you're just a guy, you know, in your dining room on your computer, I think it's going to be, it's hard to do that. And I think like, and that was like, I guess, you know, it's like my dad's gone. He'd be almost 80. I think he'd be 89 if he was still with us. And he would have said, you got to diversify your portfolio. He was a big guy about diversifying. Like, don't be dependent on one thing. You can't have all your eggs in one basket. And I think that's probably like, I don't know in the crypto world if having all the different coins and crypto and Bitcoin is there. It's almost like they're all similar eggs. I will put Bitcoin and maybe Ethereum separate from what I know, but I think some of these other ones that people are trying to get rich off of, like, I just don't know. Like, they're all very similar to me, and maybe this one's good this week. But I right? Is that there's a sum game with that, you know, zero sum game with that, where they're all still they're still really, those seem to be more volatile, obviously, than Bitcoin is.
When people say diversification or they try to employ a diversification strategy, many times people do it incorrectly. They think diversification is owning like many different things, and just like when you own many different things and things go up and things go down, you're not getting gains that you would get if you positioned your portfolio in such a way that your strongest assets made up the biggest part of your portfolio. Right. Like you could have two portfolios with 10 assets in the portfolio. Both have 10 assets, but the percentage of how those are chopped up will make those portfolios perform much differently, right? So when we talk about like diversification is something that you want to do. You want to have that second portfolio where you have things diversified, where you're not going to go up or down too much when you've amassed the wealth, right? That's that's when you want to be diversified that's protection. You're protecting the assets that you've made.
Right. Like in my case, when I retired, I took from my teaching job, and I no longer was contributing to my 403bs. Mm-hmm. What I did was I took out the highly aggressive portion of my investments. Mm-hmm. And I went to more conservative stuff because, like, I don't need. It'd be nice to make big gains, but I was more afraid of
the losses could affect you hard.
Loss over the so like, because again, like, and I've learned from you, like, there's no new money going into those accounts. It's just the money that I have. So unless I'm deciding to go back to work full time or something, like, I don't have the ability to quickly make up the loss of putting money into something. anymore. So like I don't want to lose what I already have. I understand there's always going to be a risk of loss in anything, but I'm not going to also be 50% aggressive with my funds because I can't make back that money in 20 years it'll be fine when I retire. Those 20 years have come and gone.
If Troy was here, I know we would have this conversation. So I'll share a little bit. We talked yesterday, me and him, and he said, if he would have listened to me from day one of this podcast and leveraged his portfolio very high in Bitcoin like I did, instead of having 60 coins to start and then like diversifying into these other coins, he would the amount of money that he would have different than what he has now from his portfolio would be a pretty significant.
Yep.
I'm not going to dox how much it'll be to throw it out there, but like he would be in a much different position than he is because he made the choice to be in all these altcoins, to trade and all the stuff that like I've been saying for 2.5 years. Like, yeah, it's awesome when it's awesome, but you don't know when things are going. You don't know when a tariff war is going to start. You don't know when a coin is going to rug. You don't know all these events. And Bitcoin has been here for 16 years. It's established. It's got ETF. Like it's the granddaddy. Like, yeah, you're not going to have the 3, 4, 5, 6x in Bitcoin, right? You're not gonna wake up tomorrow and it's going to be 500,000 a coin, where you might with like one of these other shit coins might go from $1 to $5. I mean, but the dollar is much more likely to go to zero than Bitcoin is to go down to 50 grand. You know what I mean? So it's just like, this is learning lessons for people. And unfortunately I've been in this space long enough to know that people won't learn the lessons. They'll continue to make the same mistakes because that's just what they do. They're degenerates. They want the quick gains. They don't want to wait. They don't want to be patient. They want to tweet their way into telling you that something's better than Bitcoin. I see it all the time. The XRP army, I bring that up because they're going very, very hard at Bitcoin maxis now, trying to say that XRPs get better than Bitcoin, which is just astronomically retarded of a statement to say. There's just so many reasons why it's not, and I'm not going to get into it and waste time on the podcast. But like that ideology is like the difference between a real Bitcoin maxi, and sometimes you got to have a little bit of a conversation with one to know if you're talking to a real Bitcoin maxi or if you're talking to a fiat maxi. A conversation with a real Bitcoin maxi gets excited when the price goes up, but stays excited no matter what. The fiat maxis are only concerned with number go up, and they're wondering when they should be selling. That's the difference. And a lot of fiat maxis are probably shitcoining too and making trades in shitcoins. And they tell you that, well, I'm trying to shitcoin to make more Bitcoin. Like, I've never traded a day, never once. I've been in Bitcoin. I've been in this crypto space because I've owned other coins too along this journey. I've been in this thing since December of 2013, and I've traded 0 times. I've never once. I couldn't tell you how to be on Uniswap or Femex or any of those exchanges and how to do a transaction. I wouldn't be the guy to tell you how to do it because I've never done it. No idea. No idea how to do leverage. No idea how to do any of that nonsense. The only thing I can tell you how to do is I've switched. There used to be I don't even know if it exists anymore, but I know in 2016 and 17 there was a website called Changelly where you could take a crypto coin and change it into another coin for a fee. You could take Bitcoin and change it into Litecoin, Ethereum, change it into Bitcoin. You could do that. I don't know if it exists anymore, but I remember back then you used to be able to do that. It's the only thing I know how to do. Trading, I'm not your guy. I have no idea how to trade. I'll never trade. I'll just continue to stack and add Bitcoin. That's the only asset in the crypto space I ever add. That's it. And these guys that are trying to trade, that own these other coins, are only worried about the fiat number, and none of these other coins are holding value over a time span against Bitcoin. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see it, because yeah, these other coins have these big gains, but the problem is they have these huge drops.
Right.
So when you look, like if you go back to a chart now, I'll go to it again real quick. We can take a look if I can spell it right. Like let's look. Ethereum all-time high 4,500, half that, right? XRP all-time high 360, 40% of that. Solana all-time high. I'm sure I would know better. I think it was like 300, but they inflate the supply, so the actual number it needs to get to, I think, is like 4 or 5. I don't know. BNB all-time high, I think, is like 800, close to 1,000. Dogecoin all-time high 70 cents. Cardano all-time high is like $3 or $4. I mean, just Chainlink all-time high, $50. Like none of these coins are anywhere near an all-time high. Then you go up to the top, Bitcoin's $10,000 away from its all-time high.
Right.
I mean, that's a literal what's that from here? 10-15% upswing, and you're an all-time high. These other coins are 50% lower than their all-time high or more. So,
and again, being like ignorant, I'm not ignorant, but like being really kind of outside of this and only listening to you and stuff that I've learned on my own, because you've inspired me to read this article or whatever, follow this guy in X. The funny thing for me is that there's probably a lot of people that are kind of like very casual about crypto, and they're into it. They don't really follow it. They're not maxi on anything. They're not probably even spending as much time as they should or could. And they probably just thought it was like happy days are here again because Trump was in. And all of a sudden, like, there's been this fluctuation in so many things because the market reacts whenever there's a change. Regardless of who it is, there's going to be these weird changes. And I'm always very cautious around election time anyway, like because of 2008. And other years where things can happen. So like, I'm just wondering if a lot of people like really thought that, oh, it's perfect now. Everything's going to be coming up roses. And then it just kind of, all of a sudden we're kind of in this little drought right now where everything's down. I just don't, I don't know if this is an adjustment with the administration and the changes in the tariffs. I just don't know. I think there's just a lot of things that are up in the air right now. And it's just kind of a time to not try to be super aggressive because you just kind of want to see where you are. Like, we just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of volatility, that's for sure. And I think, we had the big pump when he got elected, and the month or two leading up to the election, there was a lot of excitement. But I think now that he's like dug in, and you're seeing that he's back to his old ways. I'm not saying that as a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying like he's very reactionary. He gives you a lot of sound bites, and when you have a lot of sound bites, you're going to have volatility because markets are going to move when the president of the free world makes a statement and says something that could sway things either way. Like when he says the tariffs thing, or he says that he's gonna what's the Gaza stuff that he said the other day. I'm not as piped into that, but I just know that there was a lot of talk about whatever he was talking about in regards to the Gaza conflict, and that stuff moves markets. So, it is what it is. We'll jump into the next thread really quick. I got this up here from Simply Bitcoin. MicroStrategy changed its name yesterday to just Strategy with the Bitcoin B symbol at the end, as you can see of the Y up there. It's not huge news. They yesterday after hours they had their earnings call, and with the SOB 21 rules not yet in effect, I saw something like their earnings per share was like $3.03 now, but when they change it to the new accounting rules, it'll actually be like $12 a share when they're actually able to properly account for their the Bitcoin that they have with the new accounting rules. So it's like a 4x from where they're at. So it'll be interesting to see the next time that they do their earnings call, and when they're following the new rules, what it looks like and how it reacts to the market. I believe they're at like close to I lost track, somewhere around 500,000 Bitcoin that MicroStrategy has. I don't know. It's kind of crazy. This FDIC, this is another news that broke this week. US FDIC releases documents on crypto supervision, announces plans to reevaluate regulatory approaches. Looking forward, we are actively reevaluating our supervisory approach to crypto-related activities. This includes replacing Financial Institution Letter 16-2022 and providing a pathway for institutions to engage in crypto and blockchain-related activities while still adhering to safety and soundness principles. The FDIC also looks forward to engaging with the President's Working Group on Digital Assets, markets established by the President January 23rd, 2025 on the executive order. So I've been hearing a lot of chatter on I don't know if I can see the comments here because I'm not logged in. No, I'm not logged in. I've been hearing a lot of chatter, listening to some spaces, some really good spaces on what people are thinking will come of some of this stuff, like some of the ideas that they think it might affect with banks. and it's kind of crazy if some of these things come to fruition. I've heard people saying that they think that eventually we're gonna be in a world where you're gonna open up your banking app and you're gonna have your checking, your savings, your traditional investment accounts on one side, and then on the other side you're gonna have your crypto balances, and they're gonna have these programs and which gives me bad vibes because of FTX and all the other nonsense that we've been through in this space and the PTSD we have from that. But give you yield on your crypto coins that you have in the account. And again, to me, as somebody who's here for different reasons than most people that are here, like giving the bank my crypto assets and my Bitcoin completely defeats the purpose of why I'm doing any of this.
It's almost like, we like Bitcoin too now.
Yeah,
it's just kind of one of the. It's kind of like, no. I don't want you near. I don't know. Like, it's like, you're the reason we're up this creek, dude.
I mean, I've been posting a lot this past 2 weeks. Two things: don't trust, verify, because a lot of people are running with shit without any verification of it being true, which is just wild to me. Like, there's so many theories and people are tweeting things and they're not posting anything to provide any backup to what they're saying having any credence. So that's number one. So I'm always posting don't trust, verify. Number two that I posted probably more than don't trust, verify in the last couple of weeks is Bitcoiners have lost the plot, because I'm seeing a lot of fiat hungry people in this space, and I realize that there's probably more Bitcoiners post 2020 than there are pre 2020, like me, Sure. Bitcoiners that have been through 4 cycles like I have. So I have a very OG ideology of this whole thing. So I understand that. And plus I understand a lot of people got their Bitcoin at much higher valuations, so they're more emotionally invested to the price than I would be. But come on, man. If you read Satoshi's white paper and you realize why this whole thing was started, wanting the banks and rooting on the government to take these big roles, even the ETFs. I was very vocal when the ETFs happened last January that it was cool, but in the same podcast us talking about it being cool, I was laying out the fears of what this could lead to. Before we do our victory laps, let's take a look at who we're letting in the door.
Yeah, I'm really nervous. If I bring us your Bitcoin, we'll store it for you. We're going to take care of it for you, because you know what they're going to do. They do the same thing. They would do the same thing they do with your money. They're going to invest it out. They're going to. It's not going to be in the bank. We already know that. How much if I bring $100 and I deposit in the bank, how much is supposed to stay in the bank, right? It's supposed to be.
And during 2020, it was 0% reserves.
What's supposed to be under
10%.
10%. But now we know that most of these banks are not at 10%. Most of them are at 0. And
somewhere between 0 and 10.
So why, for a second, would I believe that my Bitcoin is going to be safe, and it's not going? If I had Bitcoin, that why would I believe for a second that they wouldn't do the exact same thing? They're not going to use it as a way of investing. You're going to be playing with it where you don't play with it. Your theory is very different. You're stacking it where other people are using it. But if you're going to do that, just do it yourself. I don't want to deal with banks. That's why people like credit unions, because it's a different relationship when it comes to how they want to get a loan for a car. The interest rates are going to be slightly better. It's a smaller relationship. A lot of people just prefer a federal credit union or their workers' credit union, and they do as much as their banking as they can through that, because the credit union is not trying to make money. It's basically owned by the employees that are in the the membership. It's just a weird thing to be dependent on banks. I mean, I know you kind of have to be for car loans and mortgages and things like that, but
I don't understand why we're Bitcoiners. I mean, crypto guys, I understand, I get it, because they're all fiat mindset and they're looking at this from a different lens. But Bitcoin maxis who are championing the banks holding our assets, it's I don't understand how you're doing this and you're not self-custodying your coins. That's the whole point, being your own bank, the self-sovereign individual, all those theories. I just have a bank account. If that's why do you have I don't get it. What do you?
It's in the bank system too. It's gone. It's not yours anymore.
It's not yours on
right?
an exchange. Yeah, it's just the same.
It's
Just
kind of
it's
not yours anymore. It's kind of like, and I've learned that a lot from you. That like, in a sense, yeah, you own your house, but you really don't.
hmm
Like, there's weird thing like all this stuff. Like your money is not even your money when it's in the bank. It's a weird thing. Like I guess you could take it all back and stuff it in a mattress, like the cliche says. But like the way you kind of keep control of your Bitcoin, and I'm assuming that's how it is with a lot of these other coins. Once it's in the bank, it's like they have access to it. It's almost like it could be seized, right?
it could be the same way as like FTX. I mean, it's far less likely of a big bank to blow up like FTX blew up. But I mean, when you give the bank your funds, it's the bank's funds. You have a IOU on those funds, and you can come get those funds. And 99.99% of the time, you should be able to do that. But it's technically in the contract of the bank when you open the account that it's their funds,
Right.
and you are a creditor of those funds. So when you give them crypto in this fictitious scenario that's going to apparently exist at some point, it's going to be the same thing. You're
I don't
going to
understand how that works. Like I don't understand. Like because are they going to have your password? Like it's just like
no, they'll have your keys. They have your keys.
Well, that's what I mean. Like
Well, when it's the same. Well, it's the same thing as having it on an exchange. It would be the same model. They're just going to be banks/exchanges now, which will be.
If I was a bank, I would be saying
There's
we
a
have
lot
to
of
figure out a way to get into this market.
there's a lot of logistics that
I
have to
understand
be.
why the banks think it's a good idea.
There's a lot of logistics that have to be worked out because a bank has banking hours and clearinghouses, and you know this. When you deposit a check on Friday afternoon, like the funds ain't there on Friday afternoon. You got to wait.
Well, you can pay an extra fee and it will be
Of course. So like, but crypto is a open market that trades 24/7 365. It doesn't shut down. So that would be like intermingling two separate systems into like the archaic banking system to this new crypto system. I don't know. I don't know how it's going to look. I don't know what they're trying to accomplish by doing that. I don't know. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, we'll go on to the next article. This is a good one. Rajat is a very good follow. He's actually located in Toronto. If you look at his Twitter, he's a certified financial advisor. He makes really good content. He does follow me as well on X, and he's got like 100 and something thousand followers himself, which is pretty cool that he finds my tweets valuable enough to tweet or to follow. But this is a good tweet that he put, and I wanted to share it. Owning one Bitcoin will be legendary. 1 to 4 million Bitcoin are lost, and that's a conservative number, and I would agree with that. Globally, there will be less than 1 million whole coiners, which would make, if one person owned one coin, a minimum of 1 million Bitcoin. Less than 20 million people who own 0.121 Bitcoin, a minimum of 2 million BTC. Less than 250 million people who will own 0.01 to 0.1 Bitcoin, a minimum of 2.5 million BTC globally. So that makes 12 million to 15 million of the 21 million total supply accounted for. The rest will be distributed between the other 7 billion people plus who end up adopting Bitcoin. Do you get it? So I wanted to share that because that's the thought experiment of like, well, how does Bitcoin get to these astronomical numbers, and how does the price go from 100 to 500 to a million? And Michael Saylor says in the year 2050, I think, or 2040 maybe, it's going to be 13 million a coin or something astronomical like that. Like how do those numbers? Where does the money come from? Where does the liquidity come from? And you know, if you take a step back, like I often do, and you look at, you know, the one of the most valuable things that I have in this space that I bring is the experience of being here for as long as I have. So I've felt like I was here at $200 Bitcoin. You know, I knew what that was, and I've been through all the gyrations of this market and how the price has gone to 20,000, back to 3,000, to 69,000, back to 15,000, to 108,000, to where we sit today at around 97-ish thousand. So I've seen all that, and I've been around when nobody on Twitter was talking about Bitcoin. I've been around when people said that you were nuts for ever investing in Bitcoin or owning Bitcoin or talking about Bitcoin, or you were crazy for even thinking it was going to be anything. And then I saw, you know, these other little shitcoins pop up and people trying to copy it. And it's like, imitation is the best form of flattery. And then you start seeing CNBC in the I think it was around 2020 maybe, where they started having the ticker, where you have the Dow, you have the NASDAQ, and then you have Bitcoin. And then you see, Larry Fink start talking about it, and they start talking about it at Davos. And then you have an ETF, and then now you have a presidency and an administration that has a crypto, like all these, progressions that you have. And eventually, if you look at what we've done in the last decade, what's going to happen in the next decade if we keep progressing the way that we're progressing? We're in millions of people, maybe tens of millions of people that are, Bitcoin holders and like I'm talking about straight Bitcoin, not just crypto, Bitcoin holders. And as that number goes to, hundreds of millions to over a billion to billions, and there's only this finite supply that we're all fighting over, like the price can only do one thing to accommodate, and that's go up, right? It's the same thing with a stock. It's a basic supply and demand.
Basic supply and demand.
Yeah.
And that's the genius and the simplicity of it. And it's not simplistic at all, but the genius of it is that Satoshi understood that it can't constantly grow. Like, it has to be a limited thing, and that's the power of it. That's why it's kind of like a gold or a silver or a platinum, but it's different because it's got a different type of purpose. And I think that's why a lot of people can understand the value of gold. They can watch The Mummy and see gold-plated, stuff. We understand how silver and platinum gets used in electronics and jewelry and things like that. So we understand the value of it. I think for people that really struggle with this concept of what Bitcoin is, it's like they don't understand the mining. They don't understand like how it's done and like all that stuff. Like, I feel like that's the weird part about this, and I think that's why people are afraid of it, because they don't really quite understand how is it worth anything. But it's the same thing, like with anything that we value. Like, why is my house worth like 3 times what it was when I bought it 20 years ago? It's not like my neighborhood has improved. It's not like I've put in significant investments into my house that make it worth like something that would make it worth 3 times. Why is the house like why? Like, and that is, and we know that there's no simple answer to any of that. Like, it's not just the pumping money into the economy so the dollar isn't worth anything, so the money it has to have an inflated price. Like, there's so many different reasons. But again, even like your house, like I put a new kitchen in, or like there's more people buying houses in my neighborhood, whatever. But with something like that's not touchable.
Put this next chart up that I have on the screen right now. It's exactly what you're talking about. Exactly what you made a perfect transition into the next chart. Gold is up 8,122% since 1935. Bitcoin is up 8,124% since 2017. Fractal-wise, the charts don't look that different. It's just one is moving at a glacial pace while the other moves at the speed of light. Analog versus digital, exactly what you'd expect to see. So you just laid out a scenario where people understand Bitcoin or understand gold and silver and all those things, and the big difference between gold and Bitcoin. What couple of the biggest differences? Number one, you can counterfeit gold, can't counterfeit Bitcoin. It's got a blockchain, transparent. You know exactly when you have a Bitcoin or parts of a Bitcoin.
We have fake gold now.
Yep.
We have and if they always joke that stupid meteor that they always talk about, if we go and harvest that meteor, like everybody will be a billionaire. I'm like, well, no, because then gold won't be worth anything because there's too much of it, and that circles back to the
supply and demand.
That there's supply, and again, gold is different again than silver or platinum because not only we use those things in other ways. Like, gold is not like there's not a lot of gold usage in stuff. Like, it's mainly jewelry and aesthetic stuff. It's not. It's more, ooh, it's pretty. It's not where platinum is something in silver we use. We use it in our electronics. We use it for things. Like it's a different it's mined with a different goal than just like, ooh, I want to have it because it's pretty. Like silver and platinum and those types of things get used much not that we don't use silver for jewelry too, but we also use it in like so many other things. Like that's why it's funny to me, like, yes, if we would, mining some stupid asteroid would increase the quantity of things we need. We need those resources for the things that we do. But like a gold meteor hitting the Earth hurts the value of gold because the people that control gold can't control that thing because other people are going to have access to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
that chart was great, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, you're looking at gold, and you have the gold bugs say, oh, gold's hitting all time highs, and it's like, okay, it still hasn't crested 3,000. It's gotten close. It hasn't crested 3,000, and during the great financial crisis of 2008, okay, Bitcoin topped out around 1,900. Okay, so it still hasn't even doubled since the great financial crisis. And you and I both know that the cost of goods and services has more than doubled since 2008.
Yeah.
So gold is not even keeping up with inflation since 2008. So it's not even serving the purpose that it once was supposed to be set out to serve, which is outpacing inflation. Now, again, if you look at the chart from 1913 till today, it tells the story that it is. But when we have major crises occur in the span of a little over a decade, where you have 2008 happen, and then you have a pandemic occur in 2020, 12 years later, and you look at the price of gold from the starting point of 2008, where it went up to 1,900 or around that point, to today where it trades at 28. Let me look it up. I'm not even sure. Let me give you an actual gold price so I can tell you, because I'm actually curious. Yeah, $2,873. So it's literally up less than $1,000 an ounce since the top of the financial crisis. So the store of value argument for gold, if gold was really the store of value king, gold should be like $10,000 an ounce. I mean, that's really what it should be. You should be significantly outpacing inflation and asset prices that have gone up, like these stocks that have just, quadrupled and whatever multiples that they're trading at. And gold should be $10,000 an ounce. However, the great financial crisis happens in 2008, and Satoshi sees what's going on, creates the white paper, creates Bitcoin. It takes a little bit of time. Right. And while gold depresses in price from its 1,900 and goes down following the great financial crisis into the 2010s, Bitcoin starts to ascend. Again, very small at the beginning. It doesn't even hit $100 for a couple of years. But then once it hits a couple $100, then it really starts to have, I mean, we hit $100 in 2013 for the first time. It's 2025, 12 years. So from $100 to $100,000, 100x happened in a little over a decade. Right. So from 2012 to 2025, a 12-year period, Bitcoin 100x, and gold hasn't even done a 2x. Why are we having an argument about what's better? Yeah. Now the gold chart, it's going to drop 5% and go up 5% or 10%. So you're going to be feeling safer with your volatility, quote unquote. Whereas Bitcoin on its ascension on that 100x is going to have a couple of 75 or 80% or even 90% drops along the way. So the volatility is the price you pay for vitality.
even as the way people talk about gold, it's not like people are transferring everything they own into gold either. It's not. It's only just part of their portfolio, and it's again, just the issue of gold. You've brought it up 100 times. Like, okay, but where are you putting this gold? You putting it in your trunk? Like, where are you keeping this gold? You end up having to pay somebody to store your gold. So now you're losing percentages because now you have to store it someplace. You have to pay for that. So now you have an inherent cost of the storage and maintenance and security of it. So, I mean, no one's, it's just one of those funny things like, practical things, but I don't know. To me, it's just kind of funny. It's just like, it's a cool comparison. I just think that I really think it comes down to, it comes down to this concept of like we have to find ways of demonizing something if it's a threat to the establishment, and that's what we do. Anything that's a threat to the establishment, whether it's rock and roll or Elvis Presley or whatever it is, like it's a threat to how we do things. I remember because I'm obviously follow a lot of celebrity type stuff. When artists started to negotiate their own contracts and became their own producers. Buy their own catalog so they control like their music, that type of stuff. When that became a thing, like there would be tons of articles and stories on TV, and those artists would quite often be like, because of the corporations were like, no, you just go and make your silly little songs and we'll make the money and we'll pay you to jump and dance around. Like, and they're like, no, we're gonna be the guys now that control that. But those artists in the beginning, any director, celebrity, movie maker from the 30s on that tried to control their own destiny, they went out of their way to be controlled by big corporations. So I look at Bitcoin in a similar way. Like anything that's a threat to the established banking, the established financial system, we got to destroy this. And then you can see how the politicians who are bought and paid for by these organizations are going to be like, our buddy Elizabeth Warren. Like she's not morally against Bitcoin. She's against Bitcoin because it's a threat to her authority. Mm-hmm. Like that's what this is. Like, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and that to me, it's just like,
yeah.
It's just we find ways of demonizing something all the time, whether it's like poverty, whether it's the minimum wage, whatever it is. And Bitcoin is just the latest thing that is the threat to the establishment.
I agree. Yeah, very well said. All right, I'm gonna play a video. Is it gonna hear it through here, or should I
just move your mic?
Just move my mic. All right. This video here, Cedric Youngelman, another great follow on X, another guy that follows me as well. Bitcoin is the real sequel, basically because we're living through the Matrix now. So I'm gonna end this podcast with this clip from a classic, The Matrix, and then I'll give my final thoughts after the video plays.
You want to know what it is. The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind. Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself.
Better can't get out of there soon.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. Follow me.
Bitcoin is the red pill. It's the opt out to the system. If you want to get out of this matrix, buy Bitcoin, stack Bitcoin, and most importantly, live your life in a way where you don't trust, verify. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next week. Peace.